Hey, it's John Hope Bryant, and this is the Money and Wealth podcast series on iHeartRadio on the Black Effect Network. And I'm here to talk about something that I talk about or talk around, but I've never talked to you on this podcast directly about, but it was inspired by a Time Magazine article I just wrote of why and how 700 credit score just might change America. And I'm going to be more practical in this conversation, but I want you to go to the Time Magazine and read the piece. It's out this week. It's never been used, credit scores have never been used to solve a social problem, as best I can tell in the history of this whole country. And I'm coming at this thing with a radical movement of common sense. I believe this is the get it done party. I believe the new color is green. I believe the color has actually always been green, as in U.S. currency. Whether we argue about white and black racial issues, and racism is real, make sure that I'm clear on that, or whether we're talking about political issues, red and blue. Underneath all of this, if your day is not about God or love, your day is about money. So somebody's going to say, listening to this, well, John Bryant, you talk about credit scores, and this sounds silly to me. Before I start talking about police brutality and racism and bias and discrimination and bad health and bad outcomes from social justice and all this stuff in communities, John Bryant, by the way, you telling me that has to do with your credit score? Yes, I'll get to that. John Bryant, what about slavery? Well, clearly there was no credit score in the 1800s. I'm not stupid. There was no credit score in the 1700s or the 1600s. I'm not silly. But credit score is just simply a trending indicator for hope, well-being, faith, confidence, trust, belief, which I'll get to in a minute, and why that's important to an economy and into your pocketbook. But underneath all this is the thing I'm really talking about, which is economics. And we live in a capitalist democracy, right? And there's good capitalism and there's bad capitalism. Like, nothing's wrong with money. It's the love of money that's evil. So good capitalism is where I benefit and you benefit more. Bad capitalism is where I benefit and you pay a price for it. So slavery was bad capitalism. Inventing a hair comb that you could run through your hair, or brush your hair with, brush or a hair comb that solves a problem for you, where you're getting real benefit of it, and the price is negotiated in such a way that you're comfortable paying $5, $8, $10 for that hairbrush or hair comb because it gives you untold value. Well, that's good capitalism, an example of good capitalism. Stopping at a gas station, maybe this is not a good example right now with gas prices, but typically that's good capitalism. Your automobile, again, high auto car bill, your car notes are like your house note these days, but if you got a good deal in the car, if you like the car, if it gives you, a good feeling, a good emotion, protects you, gives you transportation, delivers more value than you're paying for it, again, good capitalism, because in that car are literally thousands of inventions, thousands of patents, hundreds, if not thousands, of innovations that make up that automobile. That automobile is today like a computer, right? More than it is an old school automobile. And that's every piece of that, every component of that car, all the thousands of pieces is somebody inventing something, creating something, innovating something, selling it to somebody else who then combined it with another innovation that then created something called a mechanism, call it a transmission, call it an engine, call it a wheelbase, call it sockets, call it casings, lubrication, etc. That then air conditioning, safety, security issues, airbags, all this stuff, gear shift knobs, seats, cushions, these are all separate innovations that come together to create what you call an automobile. And you purchase that automobile at a cumulative price because you felt it was more valuable than what you're paying for it, or at least as valuable as what you were paying for it. But what you pay for that car depends on your credit score. There are other variables, but it's primarily your credit score. And if you won't go in the hood, where I grew up, and you buy a Mercedes from a car lot that is a second tier car lot, a B or a C car lot, not an A car lot, not a manufacturer's car lot, but you go to a second tier buy here, pay here credit car lot, and I've done a podcast on that, and go back and watch or listen to that podcast. And you buy a Mercedes, and the interest rate is 18 to 20 to 25% interest, which is common in a buy here, pay here lot. It's not a Mercedes, it's Mercedes payments. So what I did in this Times piece is I laid out a thesis that, first of all, should get your attention. Again, read the piece, share it with friends, let me know what you think, leave comments, but let's start a conversation. The primary thesis that gets your attention is that this makes you live longer. Like, you live 20 years longer life if you live in a 700 credit score neighborhood versus living in a 500 credit score neighborhood, 550 credit score neighborhood. Yes, that's the drop the mic. I'm gonna come back to this and say it again. For those in the back of the room, I'll say it one more time. If you live in a 500 or 550 credit score neighborhood, you live to 61 years of age. You live in a 700 credit score neighborhood, you live to 81 years of age on average. That's a 20-year difference, right? 15 minutes apart. So this is really transformational for your mindset and then your life. Because once you understand how this game works, you can master it. But as long as you don't understand you're playing a game, it's playing you. I'm gonna come back to credit scores and go deeper into this conversation, but I wanna talk now and pivot to something else that's playing you if you're aspirational and young and trying to look successful, and that is flossing. Now, be clear, I've got a nice watch on. People have commented on it before when I've done interviews. I find it fascinating. People obsess on and focus on it. But this is an insurance policy. If I ever need X dollars, I just take this watch off and can sell it. So it's an insurance policy. It looks nice, all that stuff, but it actually either sustains its value or goes up in value. I have art. It will sustain its value, and in many cases, it will go up in value. I've got things that won't sustain their value. Some automobiles I own won't sustain their value, but I can afford to have it. And when I don't have to think about it, then I can buy it, right? But if I got to think about it and figure out how can I make that payment, and my outflow exceeds my overhead, if my outflow exceeds my inflow, then my overhead is going to be my downfall. I'm going to be all stressed out. Then I shouldn't have that car. If I have to ask what the payment is versus what the interest rate is, I shouldn't have that car, and I won't, right? So why am I giving this example? Because there's a business model that we're not understanding for working class people, working poor, struggling people, middle class people, upper middle class people, even some who don't come from wealth, and who maybe don't have the global exposure of how this capitalist model actually works. I want to break down why clubs like AO, it's a club in Atlanta that just closed down, and maybe I shouldn't say its name. I was trying to say its name properly, but maybe I shouldn't say its name. I'm not criticizing the club itself, but it's a private club. You can find it yourself. It's a private club that closed down recently in Atlanta because, well, they didn't have any more customers. And they closed down in part because they, not in part, they shifted their business model from a y'all come business model to a membership business model, private club rates. So they 2,500. It's a beautiful club, by the way. Rooftop club, pool, private bar, restaurant area. From what I can tell, gorgeous, and was doing well as best I can tell, but made a critical mistake at a really bad time. They shifted from a general marketplace club where anybody can come in, pay a fee, and then partake in the festivities, to a private club of $2,500 a year and $2,500 initiation fee in the middle of a down economy. It's not a bad economy, it's not a recession, but people are delaying extravagant purchases. People are watching their dollars. Interest rates have been going up for almost 2 years now. What part of this do you not understand? When interest expense goes up, that people's cash flow tightens up and they start spending less on floss and fluff and start spending more on the basics. And so the mistake number one was mistiming the market. If he or she had done this 2 or 3 years ago, maybe they could have gotten away with it, but and locked in a customer base that are willing to pay $2,500 a year of a membership fee. But I even think that in this example I'm about to give you probably wouldn't have worked either. They mistimed the market. They misjudged their marketplace. Somebody said in the comments in this example that they didn't listen to their customer. No, they didn't pay attention to the marketplace. The customers might have said from an ego perspective, I would love to have a private club. But the next question is, are you willing to pay for it? And can you give me a credit card in advance to pay for 2 years of membership? The initiation fee plus the first year, and then give me a forward approval to renew you for another year, because my business model must last for at least 2 years to sustain itself. And I think that they would have found that the majority of their customers would not have signed up for that. So based on, I guess, just a vibe of asking people, like people say, do you want to solve poverty? Yes, but are you willing to write a check to solve it? Do you want to help your cousin, Jojo? Yes, sure. Are you willing to finance his whole lifestyle? So in this example, they misjudge the marketplace because people are hurting, which is why credit card, and they're living off credit cards in order to extend their lifestyle, because the pandemic hit. All that stimulus money flew into the economy. Literally, the U.S. economy has never used trillions of dollars. Let me rephrase that. No government has ever used trillions of dollars. Zero. No government in the history of America, history of the world, has ever had a stimulus package with trillions next to it. Trillions, 1 trillion, let alone 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trillion dollars, probably more than that, to save the biggest economy in the planet, our economy, from implosion, which happened in 2000 to 2022. It's almost like people forgot that we had the worst pandemic since the Great Depression. Since the Spanish flu, I'm sorry. And the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu. And it shut down the economy. It could have been as bad as the Great Depression had it not been managed well. We got through that, but all that money going into the marketplace went to individuals, which is, I think, if it has to go someplace, should go to the folks that are driving the economy. And 70% of the economy is driven by you and me, consumers, buying cars, buying lunch, buying dinner, buying vacations, getting our nails done, all that kind of stuff. It's just the majority of the economy is consumer spending. So I thought that was very smart that happened in that way. And I helped to design parts of the PPP program that helped small businesses at that time. But that was a one-time event. That money came in, you got it, you spent it, right? And people start spending money on things that they would not normally spend money on, and quitting their jobs and going on fancy vacations and thinking they're rich. No, you're not rich. You just had a gift from heaven, right? That was a one-time situation, and I hope you use that money to reset your life. But that money's washed out the system. It's gone. It's done. And now you're trying, many of us are trying to extend that lifestyle situation with increasing interest rates, increasing prices, because the economy is trying to adjust from free money of 0% plus all the money flowing from the government into the economy from the pandemic, which caused enormous inflation. And we're trying, and so increasing interest rates, increasing costs of daily living. And if you're trying to continue your lifestyle, guess what you have to use? Credit cards, which is not, real money. You got to pay it back. So this is the lesson I'm getting to. People in the comments said they should have a Soho. There was one comment that was brilliant and one comment that could have been brilliant, but actually missed the mark. comment that was brilliant was they should have had a blended model where they had a membership option, private membership option, and that private group could come once a week or once a month or every Tuesday or every whatever it is. And here's their area, the private area you get to chill at as a private member. And that might have worked. You could have tested the model in that way to make sure that it did work versus just betting the whole farm on going to this private model. And I don't know if it was for greed, but that's potentially a lot of money coming in at one time and doing more with less, making more by doing less work. I just think, again, one, the market timing was wrong. Two, the marketplace was wrong. Three, the customer base was wrong. What do I say that? Am I saying that black and brown people in Atlanta don't have the money? No, that's not, you missed the mark completely. The Soho model, the Soho House model, I'm a member of Soho House. My wife wanted to be a member and I joined with her. And I was recommended to Soho House by Tony Ressler, who is the 280th richest man in the world or something like that, a dear friend of mine and a business partner. So did you hear what I just said? It's a membership model. I was recommended by a billionaire who's a member, whose company pays his membership. Get that? All right? All right. I have a business case for it. I pay Shatra's membership personally, but my membership is business based. I only go there when I'm having a meeting or having a business dinner or need a quiet place to work, when I'm traveling to cities, and some place I need to go and quiet myself, right? And by the way, the closing of this place in Atlanta might benefit, and again, I'm not saying the name because I don't want to cause any negative shade on them, in case they decide to reopen or renew themselves. As I understand it, they're in talks with friends of mine. But Ryan Wilson of The Gathering Spot actually might benefit from this because he does have a private membership, business membership club in Atlanta called The Gathering Spot that has done reasonably, if not very well. He's got several locations now, and it is reasonably priced. I'm a member there, and my team uses it to hold events, and politicians go there, and hip hop stars go there, and business people go there and hold events with a business purpose. So that actually might work in the consolidation in Atlanta of private business clubs for people of color. Actually, is probably a good thing. But back to the story. The reason this doesn't work is that black people are using private personal money, now mostly on credit cards, to finance a social lifestyle, to meet somebody, to look good for somebody, trying to impress people you don't know with money you don't have, to talk about things that don't matter in a place that's optional in your life. It's not necessary for you to live. It's an add. It's a bonus. And when things get tight in your life, guess what goes first? Hello, this does. And if your credit cards get tight, guess what goes first? Which expense goes first? Hello, this does. So people who are not financially literate, who don't understand how wealth works, uses cash, uses money, their own money, to finance and floss, to finance their floss, right? Business leaders who have hosts, again, example, Soho House memberships are using, this is a business expense, a proper, legitimate business expense. Again, you might pay for your spouse, as I pay for mine personally, but the core expense is a business expense, and we use it for business purposes, and we write it off. So it's not on our personal balance sheet. I hope this is really becoming clear to you. So I'm about to give another example tied to this. But these private social clubs, once you meet a mate, meet the girl you're looking for, the guy you're looking for, are you still going to the club? Not as often. If you're going with her, it's probably more date night. You're not going there every night like you used to, and you're not going to use your limited credit card money or your free cash flow to keep doing that when you don't have to. It's, again, an option. It's not business, it's social, and social is not sustainable. And also people are flaky. They've got short attention spans. They're like, oh, it's cool today, not cool tomorrow. Oh, I don't like those people anymore. I'm not going there anymore. You've tied your whole business plan on somebody who's flaky. Number two, jets. People who don't have money, who just fall in the money, roll in the money. Think about the latest rap star or whatever image comes into your head, who's not been taught financial literacy, goes and rents a private jet. They just pay for it, or worse, buy a private jet, but they rent or lease, charter a private jet. out of their own cash flow. They just pay for it. Like, here's the money. It's just burn the money up, or they rent two or three. Like I heard this one professional athlete did, a boxer did, for one for him and his family, one for his crew number one for crew number two. Crazy stuff. He's gonna be broke. Just a matter of time, because my billionaire friends don't do that. Who rents their jets? Their companies. It's a business expense. And if they can't write it off, they're not doing it. If you see somebody renting a mansion or a beach house someplace for 2 or 3 months, they're not paying for that personally. That's a business expense. They've got that situated as their remote office, as their retreat office, as their satellite office location. So, and these are all legitimate as long as legitimate activities are happening there. All right. So, one is sustainable, one is not. All right. So the floss has to have a purpose to it. I mean, it doesn't mind. Again, well, the purpose is either you can afford it and you don't have to think about it, or that floss is somehow making you money. If you're an entertainer and you're flossing, that may support your brand. You may need to hang out in clubs because that's where people are playing your music, right? But if you hang out in the club, I suggest you own it. And if you're going to own it, make sure your inflow exceeds your outflow. Otherwise, your overhead will be your downfall, which means you need to make sure you've got a proper business model. Back to credit scores. All right. So, in addition to the fact that folks who live in a 700 credit score neighborhood live longer, 20 years longer. One thing I've said is, if your day's not about God or love, your day's about money. Let's now get specific on that. You live in a 500 credit score neighborhood. I grew up in one. Whether you're black and brown urban or you're white, poor, rural, here's what you see. You see a check casher next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a title lender, as in a car title lender, next to a liquor store. I've already said that. Next to a pawn shop. And I get an amen yet? Are you nodding your head up and down yet in agreement? Next to what? I said a liquor store, pawn shop. I'm sure I missed something. Add it in to the comments. Wherever you are responding on social, add it into your comments so the others can be educated. Next to a church. Whether you're black and brown, urban, or white, rural, there's a church right down the street trying to make you feel a little less stressed out once a week so you don't go postal on somebody on Monday. This is your neighborhood psychologist. And as I often will joke, if you don't think you need a psychologist, you probably need a psychologist. If you black and brown in America, certainly I say if you're black in America and you don't think you're crazy, you're probably crazy. So if you're not seeing a psychologist or somebody or your church minister is talking to somebody, because all a psychologist is a paid friend. If you're not talking to somebody about your stress, you're not going to church, then you're gonna find some other way to relieve your pressure. Maybe going to the club I just talked about that you're using your credit cards, and your credit cards are going to stress you out. Then you're going to have a problem at some point. So these neighborhoods are managing problems. They're problem management, and it's not even management. It's problem abatement. It's problem deferral, right? It's a surviving mindset in these neighborhoods. That's what I did. I covered this in my book, The Memo. I think I did that. That was my fourth book. How the Poor Get Saved Capitalism, The Memo, Up From Nothing. No, I did with mindset and Up From Nothing. And now my last book is Financial Literacy for All, which I want you all to get and to donate to a local library or Title I school in your neighborhood, near where you live, so you can teach financial literacy and show up as a role model, which I also cover in the timepiece, to mentor other people so they can be like you. Watch how you live your life. It may be the only Bible anybody else reads. So this is what happens in a 500 credit score neighborhood. They're target marketing you. Not because you're black, not because you're brown, not because you're woman, not because you're poor white, but because you're financially illiterate. Because they can. Because this is behavioral economics. And this is bad capitalism, as I discussed earlier, right? It's not discussed, discussed earlier, as I covered earlier. And in that same neighborhood, you live at 61 years of age. You typically go to high school. 65% of people graduate from high school in that same neighborhood. In a 700 credit score neighborhood, 95, 96% of people go to finish high school, which means at that rate of high school equivalent of completion, that means they're going to college. So essentially, the vast overwhelming majority of people in a 700 credit score neighborhood are going to college. And that means that their aspiration is informed by the latest technology, the latest offerings, which means artificial intelligence may not put them out of a job. They might understand how to do the new job of AI. They will understand finance. They'll understand technology. They'll understand market economy. So, you know, more education is just more good. I mean, you need as much education as you can shove down your throat. If you live in a 500 credit score neighborhood, violent crime per thousand is off the chain. The majority of households are single family households, single parent households. So typically the mother. Did you know that 70% of black households, by the way, as an example, are run by women? Women need a Nobel Peace Prize. I wrote a piece in Time magazine about the power of women, by the way. You should read that piece. Very thought-provoking piece. But my mother, Juanita Smith, ran our household, single mother, divorced. So these households have single parents. They have high levels of violent crime, high levels of substance abuse, drug abuse, high levels of police engagement versus police protection, low tax basis, which means low levels of home ownership. I'm going to get into covering a couple of cities specifically, side-by-side comparisons. Couldn't get in this in the Time article because it's 800 to 1,000 words, but I'm going to cover now literally the difference between a 500 and a 700 credit score neighborhood. And I want you to think about your neighborhood and where you grew up at. I want you to go to Operation Hope Financial Wellness Index, type in your zip code. You tell me your zip code. I'm going to tell you how you're living. Again, I'm going to show you how the color actually is green. I can't change how somebody feels about you. I can't change whether somebody likes you or not, or whether they like black people or brown people, or whether they have racism in their heart. But what I can help you change, is your credit score. And I'm going to tell you before we finish how you best change your credit score, what are the steps you can take to empower yourself. And by the way, number one cause of divorce in America, money. Number one cause for domestic abuse in households, money. Number one reasons why police get hurt, domestic abuse calls. Number one cause for that, money. Number one cause for stress or heart attacks in America, stress. Number one cause for stress, money. Am I saying the 700 credit score neighborhoods are perfect? No, I'm not. But you never seen a riot in a 700 credit score neighborhood in all of Americans' history. Because 700 credit score neighborhoods don't riot, they go shopping. Right? So nothing changes your life more than God or love than moving your credit score 120 points. That's a mic drop right there. Nothing changes your life more than God or love than moving your credit score 120 points. You go to the club tonight, and maybe it's the club that gets reopened in Atlanta, or maybe it's Ryan Wilson's club, the Gathering Spot, the business club that's open for an evening soiree. You go to a club, right? And you say, oh man, she's fine. Brother's like, she's fine. Sister's like, oh, he's so handsome. Ask the name, get acquainted. As soon as you think this is a quasi-serious conversation, before anybody's had too many drinks, for that overpriced liquor, by the way, that costs a fraction of what you're paying for it, in that VIP club area that you would not stand in during the day because there's probably all kind of stuff running around that would scare the bejeebers out of you, but it's night and it's dark and there's a velvet rope on it and they've now upcharged you and you think it's cool. Anyway, okay. So when you go to that club tonight, and before you get drunk, intoxicated, I want you to ask the other person, what's your credit score? And I'm only partly kidding, because part of marriage, yes, romance is important, and spirituality and religion is the core of it, and make sure that it's endowed by God, the institution of marriage. But as I covered in the Breakfast Club, marriage came from business thousands of years before God endowed it with special features and meaning, so that you rooted in a spiritual purpose for your marriage. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're not marrying a dunce, marrying an idiot, marrying a bonehead, marrying somebody who can't raise your children, marrying somebody who can't add. If 2 + 2, this is where I love and I say math, I like math because it doesn't have an opinion. That's a Melody Hobson quote. So I've co-opted it. And the math of a marriage and a relationship is that it needs to be um, multiplication, not just addition. So it, 2 plus 2 is compounding. 2 plus 2 has to equal more than 4. 1 plus 1 has to equal more than 2 in a relationship. It means 4, 6, 8, or 10. Otherwise, why are you doing it? If you're not better together, why are you doing it? And it just so happens that financial stress causes in a surviving mindset relationship, domestic abuse, arguments, people to start to do all kind of crazy stuff to try to meet their needs, like stealing, theft, hurting your own neighborhood. That's where black on black, I think, crime comes from. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Ooh, let me be a bum, let me be an idiot, let me be a waste to my own community and society and people." No, they're trying to get by, and they look around their neighborhoods to figure out how they can get by, and unfortunately, they end up preying on somebody who looks like them. That business model, that eating yourself business model, crab in the barrel business model, is not sustainable. It's not going to work. It's going to fail. I'm trying to give you a path forward to stability, and 700 credit score neighborhoods represent that, and it's something you can control. I can help you get your credit score right, and that may help you get your life right. And we live in a society, this free enterprise capitalist democracy society, where from the time you go to bed at night to the time you wake up in the morning, you're actually having a financial transaction because you're putting your head on the pillow. The government didn't issue it to you. You're using an alarm clock to wake you up that the government didn't issue to you. You bought it. You're paying for utilities and rent and air conditioning and heating that you pay for. And when you wake up in the morning at 9 o'clock, from 9 until you go to bed at night, you're once again dealing with capitalism and free enterprise. It's just a series of financial transactions all day that you're not paying attention to. And if you're paying the high rates for that, then you are living in an unsustainable situation. You're paying, and those who make the least pay the most. Let me get now into details. You live in Chicago, all right? And I did a video on this. You should look it up, check it out on my social media page, at John Hope Bryan or at Operation Hope. You'll find it in both places. So if anybody listening to this from Chicago, you know where West Garfield Park is. That's 60624 zip code. You're living in Lincoln Park, or you know Lincoln Park. That's 15 minutes away by car from Garfield Park. I know because I drove it. That's 60614 zip code. Okay, now you can go again. You go to the Hope Financial Wellness Index and put your zip code in. It'll tell you what your credit score is in that neighborhood. By the way, lowest credit score state in America, Mississippi. I'm going to cover this in the timepiece. Highest credit score state in America, I keep wanting to say Minnesota. Minneapolis. Minnesota's in Minneapolis. Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. Minneapolis is in Minnesota. I got that right. And so Minnesota has a 750 or 760 average credit score, and Mississippi has a 666 average credit score. Now you may say 666 average credit score is not so bad. No, I said average and or median, which means that you had people above that credit score. So you have people who are wealthy at 700, 750, 800. You have people who are poor at 600, 550, 500, 400. And what that says in Mississippi is you had many more people who are poor pulling that number down than you had wealthy people pulling that number up. And in a place like Minnesota, you had more people who are wealthy or doing well, or at least aspirational and succeeding, pulling that number up. So the average is higher, right? I have a credit score of 800 and change. My mother was 854, if you can believe that. If on my block or in my neighborhood, if I'm the only 800 credit score, and then everybody else is, 600 and 500 credit score, even though I'm an 800 credit score, the average in my neighborhood is going to be more like 690 or something like that, because my high average is going to be pulled down by everybody else's low average. Does that make any sense? And so why is this important? Okay, because culture is everything. Your neighborhood has a culture. Your household has a culture. Your block that you live on has a culture. America has a culture. Your cities have a culture. That's why New York City is different from Buffalo, New York. That's why Los Angeles is very different from San Francisco. That's why Atlanta is different from Columbus, Georgia. Um, that's why you move from one place to another and travel one place to another. That's why New Orleans in Louisiana is different from Shreveport in Louisiana. These places have cultures. They have personalities, right? And what is a personality in your household? What is a personality in your social circle? If you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. You've heard me say this over and over again. I'm trying to put these pieces together for you so it starts to make sense. Watch who you hang around because we model what we see. Why do kids in underserved neighborhoods want to be rap stars, athletes, and drug dealers? They're not dumb and they're not stupid. They're brilliant, but they're modeling what they see. We got to give them something different to see. And I talk about urban communities and poverty, by the way. Where do you think NASCAR came from? Came from moonshine running, from poor whites in the Appalachian Mountains who were running from the police. Did you know that? And they realized at some point that business model is not going to work. So they said, well, look, what part of this is sustainable? Because I'm going to get shot, killed, or murdered, or in prison just doing the running from the police and the moonshine thing. So I'm a good driver. So the driving went from driving on the streets and running from the police to then running behind the competitors on a circle on the dirt, and that turned into the stadium driving you see today in NASCAR. And these families, many of these families in NASCAR are the descendants of moonshine runners. Did you know that? All right, rainbows after storms. Back to the story. Chicago. Take out your pen and paper or your iPad or your iPhone or whatever it is you write on in this digital world. Garfield, 60624. Average credit score, 597. Actually, not that bad. You'll see what I mean by that in a minute. Lincoln Park, credit score is 739. Median household income, Garfield Park, $25,648. Lincoln Park, 15 minutes apart, $117,000 average income. Unemployment rate, 11.8% versus 2.3%. Home ownership rate. Check this out now. The easiest way to build wealth in America is home ownership. You've heard me say that a million times. The biggest business in the world is home ownership. Biggest business in the world is real estate. My bad. And every millionaire, including the one talking to you now, is steeped in real estate, and typically owns their own home. But their portfolio includes real estate. 27% home ownership rate in Garfield Park, 60624. What's the median household income for black people in America? 41, 42, 43, 44%. What's the median household income for white America? About 75%. That 30%, 35% delta difference between black home ownership rate and white home ownership rate is the gaping gap of wealth creation or wealth inequality in this country. And there are historic reasons for it that go all the way back to slavery and Jim Crow era and the 40 Acres and a Mule and all that stuff, which I cover in my book, Financial Literacy for All, in great detail. And also the huge swath of land, 10% of all American land that was given to settlers who went west after the Civil War. 99.9% did look like me, which is 100 million Americans today who benefited from that. So wealth creation and poverty alleviation, or the lack thereof, are pretty obvious of why we end up where we end up, and correcting it. What I'm doing now is using math and formulas, and using the same system that enslaved us, that burdened us, to set us free and to give us opportunity. Hello, that's a wrap. Killer Mike, you paying attention, my brother? T.I., you paying attention? To give you some rap content for your next albums, brothers. They'll be at our Hope Global Forum, by the way. 27% for homeownership rate for Garfield Park, compared to 45% in Lincoln Park, which is actually a very low number, but there's a lot of apartment living and condos. Lincoln Park is basically downtown in Chicago, so it's condo living in downtown. And that was a suburban area, it would be 75-80% homeownership rate. But the Garfield Park is definitely a residential neighborhood, so it's 27% is extremely low. Median home value, 180,000, 88,000 versus almost 700,000 in that same neighborhood. Violent crimes per thousand, get this, 75 5.0 compared to 5.14. One's safe and one is incredibly not safe. High school graduation rate, 63.8% in 60624 Garfield Park, compared to 92% in Lincoln Park, basically going to college. And life expectancy rate, again, this is not as bad as I've seen. If you get below the 500 credit score, it's worse than this, but 69 years of age on average. So you get Social Security at what, 65? So you're just getting Social Security and you drop dead. You get 2-3 years of chilling and you're dead. The average for a 500 credit score neighborhood is 61 years. You don't even make it to Social Security. What did Malcolm X say? We've been bamboozled, we've been tricked, we've been fooled. Hello. And then Lincoln Park, of course, 81 years of age, which is the average for a 700 credit score neighborhood. You can't make this stuff up, right? This is not like John Bryant's theory on relativity and success and failure. This, again, I like math because it doesn't have an opinion. Let's look at Atlanta, the city that I've called home. I grew up in LA, but I now call Atlanta home. Forest Park, as an example, 30297 zip code, 619 credit score. Not bad at all, actually. But Virginia Highlands, 30306, 740 credit score. Once again, median household income, 30,000 versus 103,000. Unemployment rate, 9% versus 3%. Home ownership rate, not so bad, 43% versus 58%. But as you see, as the credit score goes up, in the underserved neighborhoods, the worst things get less bad. And get, or as I'd say, my grew up in a neighborhood where I grew up, mo better. 43% is not good, but it's actually the national average for black folks, by the way, as I've already mentioned. But it's not horrible. It's not. This is actually what I see normally in these 500 credit score neighborhoods is a homeownership rate in the twos, 25, 27. That's why I'm saying 43% is not bad, but it's not aspirational either. You want a 75% home ownership, 75% home ownership rate. Median home value, $55,000 versus $486,000. This is 15 minutes apart. Violent crimes per 1,000, 7.4 versus 2.8. Not as bad as what I just mentioned, Chicago, but again, the credit score is in the sixes in Forest Park versus the 500s in Garfield Park. High school graduation rate, 60% versus 97%. Life expectancy rate, get this, 74 years versus 82 years. So again, the 700 credit score neighborhood is about the same, 81, 82 years. And again, the low wealth neighborhood, as that credit score goes up, that life expectancy creeps up. It's still 74 years. It's not 82 years. You're still living just under a decade less on average of lifespan. So now let's go to Memphis, Tennessee. I was just there on the American Aspiration Tour for my new book, Financial Literacy for All, my business plan for America and Operation Hope's work. Average credit score in Memphis, New Pathways area, zip code 38126. By the way, send me your zip code if you want me to do the work for you. I'll map this out. I'll map out the tale of two cities in your area. If you want to be on the American Aspiration Tour, go to the American Aspiration Tour page and submit a request. We'll see if we can get a hold of your mayor and get them to invite me to come through. Mayor Andre Dickens kicked it off with me in Atlanta. Then I went with Mayor Paul Young in Memphis and coming to Mayor Stephen Reed next, amongst others. So I would love to come to your city. Here's Memphis again. 584 credit score in Memphis, 38126 zip code. Tyree Nichols killing, a zip code where Tyree Nichols was killed. It's 38141 zip code. That's 632 credit score. In Germantown in Memphis, zip code 38139, 745 credit score. By the way, I don't even need to see these credit scores to tell you how about these neighborhoods. 745 is completely stabilized. That's a middle class, upper middle class neighborhood. I don't even just see it. Somebody watching or listening to this can just confirm, yep, he's right. And I can tell you where 584 credit score is. That's toe up from the flow up. And the median household income is $13,000 in 584. Credit score neighborhood, unemployment rate is 10%, which is low actually for that kind of neighborhood. Home ownership rate is 13%. Oh, just broke my heart. 13%. Jeez Louise. Median home value, $50,000 on average. Violent crimes per 1,000, wait for this, 38.0 compared to 1.1. And then High school graduation rate, 73%, actually not that bad, compared to 96% in that wealthy neighborhood I mentioned to you. Life expectancy, 68 years in the 38126 credit zip code, where there's a 584 credit score, and 81 years of age in the 745 credit score. So I think you're starting to get it. Like, I can do this all day, but I think it's important. I want you to understand that math works, that there's a formula to success. Success is intentional, and so is failure. And I want you to create a formula for your success. Do the math, understand the formula, understand financial literacy, understand how capitalism free enterprise works. Get my book, Financial Literacy for All. Listen to this podcast every week. It's literally a library for success for your life. You listen to the whole year. Subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe. Follow us on social media. Get your life coach through Operation Hope, your financial coach. We are America's financial coach at Operation Hope. Because of scholarships, it's free to you. This is the civil rights movement, from civil rights to silver rights, from the streets to the C-suites, rebuilding the ladder of aspiration and opportunity in America and soon around the world too. John Hope Bryant, and I believe financial literacy is a civil rights issue of this generation. Let me know what you think. Read this Time Magazine article, share it, let's discuss. To quote my friend Charlemagne, peace and light.